Welcome to the Nate and Dorin podcast. We are professional videographers based in Vancouver, Canada, and we are here to talk about relevant topics within the video and media industry. I'm Nate, and I run Nate Dixon Media.
And I'm Dorin, the videographer, solo entrepreneur offering video production services. And today we're going to discuss client communication, and that includes contracts, terms of service, and just in general, understanding the client and make sure the client understands you. Yeah, this is going to get interesting. Um, I think the first thing that needs to be said is I th- I think you agree with me here, Nate. We both encourage that if you're a professional, you should have a clearly written record of agreement with your client. If that's an official contract, good for you. But it could also be like emails or text. Those are valid in backing up a professional agreement. So I think you should always try and have that written.
Agreed. Yeah, you can't just have a phone call and discuss everything and okay, good to go. You always want to follow up, summarize with an email, just have it all written down,
Mm-hmm.
make sure everybody's on the same page. Yeah, that can save your butt and that can help a client, if there's something they forgot. I know I forget things on phone calls all the time, so
Mm,
it's really helpful when somebody sends me a follow-up email. So that's like something you should really get in the habit of doing.
yeah. Yeah, especially if you have multiple clients a month. I've had that where I like would mistake details from one client from one project to another. And I'm like, oh yeah, you guys do legal advice, right? Like, no, we're the marketing agency. Like, okay, I have to check the
Don't mix up
notes.
a wedding and a funeral and you're like, "Oh, so who's the lucky lady?" And they're like, "She passed away 3 weeks ago."
It was horrible.
Yeah, I want to avoid situations like that.
Yep. um. So obviously, either a client puts out a need somewhere on some advertising space, looking for gigs or looking for contractors, looking for employment. Um, or the client reaches out to you directly through your website and says, "Hey, I need this. Are you available?" So that's usually how it starts, or with a phone call. Hi, I want to do this type of video, and you talk on the phone. Um, when do you think, like, what would your process be? What do you first discuss? If it, like, let's say I call you up and I say, "Hey, I need a 1 minute promo video for my product." How would that conversation and communication and what would we discuss?
Well, you want to get through a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
First, you want to set a timeline. When do you need this by?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a week? Is it a month? Or is it like, oh, I'm just thinking about it for, maybe next season? And you're like, okay, that can kind of set the priority of things.
That's a huge
You
one.
won't,
I actually haven't been like at the start of my freelance, I didn't do that. I would talk all the project details and then at the end, like, so when are you thinking of filming this? Like, oh, tomorrow. Like, I'm booked tomorrow. Oh, okay, bye. And I'm like, wow, I just talked for half an hour. So yeah, that's a huge number one. Talk
yeah,
schedule first.
schedule first. Next one I usually try and get is budget.
Hmm.
First of all, do our budgets match up? You know,
So what do
or
you mean
what's your
by
expectation?
yeah, what do you mean by budget? So let's go back to the hypothetical. If I'm the client and I'm like, yeah, I need a 1 minute video of my product, how much is that gonna cost?
And then to determine how much that cost, maybe I'd get some more details like, well, what kind of product is it? Where do we need to film it? So location would be another big one.
Hmm.
Like, oh, do I need to take a ferry to an island because it's a specific thing that has to happen? That's going to change how much,
Yeah.
what the
My
availability and the
product
price of things.
is sportswear. And yeah, let's film in the mountain and in the desert and in the and they just start railing off like five locations. Like, it's a 1 minute
Uh,
video, but you're making me travel the world.
so yeah, I guess you want to get location
Hmm.
to try and basically everything is informing uh, the budget. I think that's like a really key thing for a lot of companies and people.
Mm-hmm.
If they've worked with a videographer before, maybe they have a ballpark figure in mind,
Mm-hmm.
or they've been given a set budget from their manager or their boss, like you can spend X amount on this video.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can kind of say, okay, well, within that range, here's what we can do. Here's how fancy we can get. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you go from there. And that way, when you send an estimate, it's something that you guys both are expecting. You don't want to never discuss budget at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh, that'll cost, $1,000. And they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. My
So,
cousin did it for $200.
so why are you calling me then? Oh, because I didn't like it. Like, oh, okay, well. um, so if a client doesn't ask the question from the get-go, when do you bring up budget?
Probably pretty quick after schedule and location. I'd say, well, do you have a budget in mind for this project?
Mm-hmm.
And if they say
Okay.
yes, great. If no, then I suss out more details. Like, have you worked with a videographer before?
I started
Um,
asking that too, yeah.
that's a key one.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
good one to potentially pick up a red flag. If they're like,
mm,
yeah, we've had a video done last year, but it was a disaster. That makes my ears perk up, and I'm like, oh, all right. Well, what can you share that video with me, and can we discuss what you liked and what you thought could have been done better? And then you can see like, yeah, the guy messed up, or the guy did everything right, and they have an approach issue. Like
mm,
oh, and we wanted him to do five more things, and he wanted to charge extra. Like, oh, that's a red flag. Okay, you guys think that work is infinite for one project. Because that's the
definitely.
other thing I was gonna say. Like, when I would be too quick to give them a quote to see if they're interested or not, then they would start adding stuff on. Like, oh,
Uh,
so wait, this video would require on-screen talent. Yes, but it would also require a voiceover. Yes, it would also require this. Yeah. So when I get to the editing questions, I realize like, oh, okay, I have to confront them. I have to tell them like, okay, actually, that's gonna cost more. Oh no, and it's one of those because you hook them with the first one, and then if they see you upcharging, then they're kind of thrown off by that. Although it's a legitimate upcharge, it's just that uh tactile, or what's it called, like a delicate placement of when to ask is always a tricky thing.
yeah, well, you just want to get as much information as you
Mm,
can first, right? Like you're saying, oh, can I see a video that you didn't like? Or, what's your relationship been in the past with video production agencies or anything like that?
hmm
The more information you have, the more informed you can be about when you give this quote.
yeah.
And then if they, that's the next step. They either say yes, no, or let's talk about it. And then you can
hmm
go from there.
Yeah, I've had enough projects where I thought it's simple enough, and I just said, yeah, okay, we'll do it. And then when it got to the actual planning phase and scheduling, I realized that they had expectations that we had not discussed. So, for example, um, if you say like, if you briefly say that, yeah, I'll have the cameras and the lights and the microphones, and they also have an audience, they expected me to have a PA system and the microphone to be heard in the entire room. I'm like, sorry, I
Oh,
no, I'm talking about the video aspect of it, not the audio visual, the AV side.
yeah. Not the whole venue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or sometimes people will inquire about wedding packages and assume that I also do photo at the same time as video as a solo person. So, no. But it's good that you asked. They're like, okay,
Yeah.
good, good, good. We want to go with this package. Does this include photos? Like, it doesn't say that on my website, but thanks for asking. Otherwise, I would show up and you'd be like, oh, no photos? Like, oh, that's awkward. So I guess a way to go around that would be to ask them, do you guys have a photographer? I would like to, are they coming to and attending the rehearsal? Stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, I guess that ties into what do you expect from the client and what do they expect from you,
Yeah.
right?
It
So,
it's so many unique situations that I can discuss. I don't even know where to start. I'll start with this one. Like I've asked a
sure,
client,
just hit us
like,
with one, yeah.
do you would you like a logo animation video? Do you have one? No, we don't have a logo animation video. Like, okay, I'll make one for you. And I quote him for that, like let's say $300. Um, and then I email them like, okay, can you please send me over your logo file so I can add it to the animation? Like, oh, I thought you were making it. So they understood by me making a logo animation that I would also make the logo for them. So that was a little bit of a miscommunication.
Yep, that is a good one. Yep. For a project I'm doing soon, it's like an interview, but I'm asking them for a bunch of like old archive like photos from their scrapbooks and stuff to tie in because it's talking about someone's life and how they were raised.
Hmm.
So that had to be clearly defined. Like, okay, here's when I need you to send all the photos by. They need to be. You can't just mail me them. They need to be digital photos, like scans, so that I can put them in the edit. And if we didn't specify that, they could just like give me a photo album and like, oh, here, scan them. And then I'd be like, well, I don't know which ones to do. It's not
Hmm.
my relative. So that's stuff that could creep up on you if you, yeah, don't specify it ahead of time.
Yeah, I've had a funeral, like a memorial video I had to do once, and yeah, they just send me pictures, and they're like, "Oh, just use the one with Uncle Tom in the blue car." And there's like several blue car and several people, and I'm like, I don't know which one's Uncle Tom, man.
Yeah, that's too funny.
Yeah.
Um, do you always put like dates in your contract?
Well, yeah. So that's always discussed. Like I said, we discussed earlier. I asked them, okay, when do you want to film? Is one question, and when do you need to edit by? Is because those are two different dates. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, I put both of those as separate line items in the contract, like desired filming date, desired edit, or project completion date. Um, and depending how big the project you might have, I've had one of my biggest clients give me a very detailed schedule expectation of we're filming Friday, you're doing the first rough cut by Monday, we're going to give you feedback on that by Tuesday, by Wednesday you're going to do the second rough cut, by Thursday or whatever, we'll give you final feedback, and Friday morning this needs to be done. I was like, okay.
Oof.
Yeah. Um, because they were like they were the middleman, but like they were a marketing agency and they were dealing with the client, and I was just dealing with the video, so there's a lot of bouncing around. But it turned out really good because of proper communication, and these guys knew exactly how to do it. So that was
That's
great.
awesome.
Yeah. Um, because another thing would be to discuss how many days. Sometimes clients have an expectation that something will be done quick. Like, oh, I'm doing this what do you call it? Like one of those Udemy course style, like, 10 lessons on how to be a better dancer or something like that. And they think like, oh, they know that each module and each thing will be this much time as a final product, and they just assume it's going to take that much time to film. And no, it doesn't, because you'll
No.
need to take a break because you can't dance for 8 hours straight. You're gonna mess up a few times. A few times there's gonna be other interruptions, and you kind of have to assess if the client has carefully gauged how much time is involved in certain things. For example, if we turn back to what you were mentioning earlier, multiple locations, are we, that's another question I ask. I'm like, do we film your corporate highlight video just everyone in the same office, or are we going to each person's office individually and filming the outside and the inside of the building? And depending on what they answer, I tell them, well, moving two cameras into five office uh, departments is gonna take time away from filming. So we're gonna need 2 days to film that. Oh, I wasn't aware. Like, yeah, sorry, it's we have to move the lighting, we have to move the cameras, um, we have to change the batteries. You have to educate your client, especially if they haven't had experience with video production before.
Hmm. Definitely. Another thing you got to make sure is expected format,
Mm.
right?
You think it'd
So,
be pretty straightforward, but I still get the odd client that's like, "Can you make DVDs?"
oh yeah, yeah, I've definitely had people want DVDs. Like a few people wanted a copy of their wedding to send to like their grandparents, right? Maybe grandma and grandpa don't have a Blu-ray player. They just have, their DVD player they've had for 20 years. So grandma specifically asked for this. So yeah, they want a copy of it on DVD. So
Oh man.
got to make sure that ahead of time. Make sure if you have a DVD burner, great. But I know I don't anymore. So
Hmm.
that's something I need to fire up my old laptop to do,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
Or
I had an Australian client ask me for PAL resolution or frame rate. I
right, it'd
mean,
have to
yeah,
be coded differently, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So you can do frame rate, resolution, obviously, if
Mm-hmm.
they want just 1080p, great. If they actually expect 4K, make sure that you're always filming that resolution. Let them know potentially the limitations of your camera. Oh, well, I can't do slow-mo and 4K. Otherwise, it'll be upscaled.
Mm-hmm.
So if they depends on their pickiness or what exactly their target is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, or if they want something for social media, I often specify like if I'm taking photos, especially, um, do you need like some portrait photos or is it all landscape?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, I'll take like one of each. Like I was doing some photography of some landscape lighting, so we went at night, and they wanted to boost their Instagram a lot. So I was like, oh well, each angle I'll take like a widescreen for your website and then a portrait for your Instagram, and that way it can be full resolution, and then so I can charge for two pictures because it is separately edited and I have to redo everything.
Mm-hmm.
But if I didn't specify that, they might not have thought of that. Oh yeah, when someone looks at their phone, it's like 90 degrees widescreen. It's not like you can't just crop it and you like slice out so much potentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's something for photos too that I've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some people are comfortable with a direct download link. Other people want a hard drive or a USB, like a flash drive. So yeah, different expectations, something that you have to inquire, because you don't know what people might be comfortable with. For example, maybe your client deals with a operating system that needs your USB to be formatted in a specific format. That's another thing you need to inquire.
Pro tip, always just format to exFAT because that can be read by Mac and PC.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike FAT32, there's no 4 GB file size limitation. So you can have files
Mm-hmm.
any size. That's why I
Okay.
always format my USBs too, because that way I know it'll be able to be read
Mm-hmm.
Mac, Windows, Linux, no
Mm-hmm.
file size restrictions.
Yeah, good tip. Forgot about that. um, here's a juicy one for you, Nate. Copyright ownership. How do you approach it?
Honestly, I don't really talk about it too much. I don't use a ton of stuff on like promotions or marketing material. So like I'll usually ask a client ahead of time, like, hey, is it okay if I use this for my portfolio? And then they're like, oh yeah, sure, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So maybe you'd be better versed to speak with that. I haven't really had to discuss it in depth or in detail
Hmm. But you do
with a
have like
client.
a promo video or a demo reel or a highlight video, a banner video, something.
Yeah, yeah, there's
Hmm.
stuff that I display on my website for sure.
Yeah. So for that,
Yeah.
you need to make sure your client understands that in order for me to show that I'm capable of doing work, I need to be able to show snippets of completed projects. Or another cool thing is if the project is public, you just link to the video from their website. You can
Mm,
embed it in your website and have an external link going to their website. Like, oh, check it out. On I did a video for whatever city of Surrey or something. Um, by default, because I've had to look into this when I started. By default, this is specific to Canada. Canadian law, last I checked, specifically states that the copyright is of the camera owner operator. So if I'm filming something with my camera that you agreed to me filming, regardless of everything else, I own first copyright on that. Um, but obviously, then your agreement kicks in. Like by default, I can use snippets for my portfolio, and my clients obviously use it for what they want it display on their website or the display on their Facebook, or if it's a TV ad, we discussed that aspect of it. And then you have to contact the TV company for the expected format and the expected resolution, all that. Um, but I've had a few clients that have told me this is not public, this is for internal staff training, and we don't want you displaying it on your website. Like, fair enough. Thank you very much for letting me know. I agree to that term. Or some people
hmm
will want exclusive copyright ownership of material, in which case most videographers I've seen charge an extra fee for an exclusive license. Like, I cannot use this material to promote myself, therefore you have to pay an extra fee. Because let's say another client comes and has a similarly unique idea, like, oh, have you ever done something like this? Like, yes, I have. I can't show you though. So that
hmm
doesn't bode well. Um, or it might just be sensitive or confidential issues. That's another thing you should be discussing with your client, especially if it's a public setting. So, for example, I filmed a corporate conference and I was filming audience, and I was notified by staff that some a specific corner of the audience I should stay away from because they're refugees that are like hunted by their home country.
mm
So
hmm
they need to be kept anonymous and their whereabouts unknown. I was like, whoa, okay. It's kind of exciting. I'm like, oh man, is this like a movie set? What's going on here? Or it might just be like I've had to film something for some upcoming technology that was for investors only. And it was again private and not public, so I can't show the technology on display because that would be giving away trade secrets.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another good thing to ask too.
Hmm.
Yeah, does anything have to be kept under wraps?
I
An
had
NDA or whatever?
Yeah, this is very interesting. I wonder if you know about this. I did not, and it kind of surprised me. I did a promo for a dental office, and they made me blur out the screen where you could see a teeth, because they said teeth are like fingerprints, and it's classified patient information. It's just a picture of the teeth, no name, no nothing. Like, oh, you
Mm,
blur out the teeth.
wow.
Yeah, I was like, okay, because like apparently the tooth imprint is unique. And I was like, wow, I've learned something new today, and that blows my mind. I did not know that.
Mm,
So I had to get more creative on how to incorporate that imagery for a dental place. And I can't remember what the workaround was, but they were happy with the end result. But yeah, confidentiality was expressed by my client, and it's a good thing they told me that so I could fix it before giving them the final video. Because the last thing you want to do is give the client the final video and say it's done, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm not happy with it," because then that opens
Hmm.
up other discussions like refunds, or like I don't know, extra revisions. They want extra work. It's I don't know. It's have you ever had to do a refund, or have you ever had a
Oh,
unsatisfied client?
thankfully, I haven't had to do a refund before, no.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, there's never been a time where I've like lost footage or
Mm-hmm.
not been able to deliver something that I promised. So thankfully, I haven't had to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope to never have to do a refund like that because that's just terrible, especially if it's a once in a lifetime event for someone, like a
Yeah.
wedding.
Yeah.
Like, man, weddings can be so high stress that way. Like if something
Yeah.
completely out of your control, like, oh, my like what was it? Your A7 III, the motherboard like fried or something from that, what was it, the dummy battery?
I can't remember. I don't know exactly what caused it because I'm still using the same setup and it's not acting up anymore. But yeah, I was detapping it to a V mount and yeah, didn't work anymore. The
Fried.
HDMI the
And then
HDMI didn't work. The rest of the camera did. So I just
yeah,
recorded
so
internally at the corporate thing.
yeah, luckily you're able to at least record internally, but sometimes stuff that's completely out of control, like unless it's something like I don't know, an EMP happens and everything electronic shuts off, then I think maybe you can put that in your contract, like things out of my control. But if it's
Hmm.
your fault, like you didn't bring a backup memory card or you
Mm-hmm.
ran out of recording space or didn't bring enough batteries, like that kind of stuff, that is totally on you. That's
Which is why you should get liability insurance.
okay. So tell me a little bit about that. Give me a quick refresher because I don't have liability insurance.
Okay. Liability, I haven't looked into this, so I don't know the details exactly, but from what I recall, is basically, like you said, stuff that you're to blame for. So stuff that the client can sue you for. So you're liable if you promise something and you don't deliver, like, oh, I didn't capture what I promised I would capture because I had to go pee, and that's when the thing happened, or something. But also if you cause any damages due to your own fault. So like untaped, unsecured cables on the ground, and your client trips, falls, and breaks teeth.
Oh,
Yes. Or breaks a priceless prototype of a thing. Like liability means stuff that's your fault. Insurance will help you cover that lawsuit up to a
so
point.
do you have liability insurance right now?
I do until the end of the month. I'm not renewing with those guys. I need to look into a new insurance company. Thanks for reminding me. I need to do that next week.
Hmm.
Because
Eh,
these guys started removing a bunch of stuff, which I call BS on, and they also increased. So they removed a bunch of coverage and then they increased the rate. So I'm not buying that.
so ballpark, how much is it a month? Let's say for this.
For for specifically self-employed, like there's so many factors. For my current setup and
Mm,
my current location, it's like 800 a year.
okay.
But I've heard of other videographers having up to like 1500 because they have more stuff. And again, this might depend on your area and also how many years you've been doing it. And generally, insurance is very skeptical of you when they start out, so they won't give you all the perks. And then later on, like, okay, you've been claim free for 4 years. Sure, we can add this exclusive
Mm.
thing, like the thing that I was not able to get from the get go, and most videographers aren't able to in this area, at least that I've talked to, were was theft insurance.
Mm.
people stealing your stuff while you unloaded half your gear and wheeled it in. The other half got stolen in the meantime in those 2 minutes before you got back. And I've heard stories of that, and it's scary. It's happening to even big people, like videographers like Phil Bloom posted.
Mm,
Like how do I lose everything in 2 minutes? Like you just do. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So, but insurance is a whole topic in and of itself that I am not knowledgeable on, and I need to read up on it next week.
I
But
guess.
for me personally, refunds is well, like let me okay, you haven't had to have this situation yet, but this might happen. Let's say you book a wedding or whatever the wedding people like the couple books you for videography for a wedding that's like next year. You ask them for an advance payment, and 2 months later they cancel and they want it back. Is that a refund or not?
Mm, I don't know. I don't think so. I think if it hasn't actually happened and you haven't delivered anything, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to say. It seems like if it's not like the day before, if they're not like, hey, we have a wedding in 2 months, and then like the day before they're like, oh, psych, actually,
Mm-hmm.
then I'd say, well, now you just took away
Yeah,
that day for me to book anything else.
exactly. And that might fill up that week, or it might fill up before. Like wedding videographers that deal only with weddings always book the year before, and are like, okay, 23rd August, gotcha, for next year. And then if they cancel 2 months later, and he's not able to fill that, or he had someone else inquire on that date and he passed on it, that's the reason why these guys won't give you a refund for an advance payment.
Mm,
And yeah,
yeah.
I've had clients do that where they like, well, they weren't even clients because they backed out. Like, oh, we need you for this, and then by that date, oh, we're not doing it tomorrow. Sorry. Like, well, you just ruined my like. I should have taken an advance payment. And here's the thing, Nate.
Mm.
If they can get the refund, doesn't change a thing. Whether you take it or not doesn't matter. You're still left without the money and with the day booked off and not made profitable. So that's why like having a refund and giving a client flexibility to ditch you last second is not lucrative. That's
It's not
why.
really doable for us solo people. Like,
Hmm.
bigger places can do it because they can just fill up the client slots way easier.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know,
Yes.
like the difference between booking with a big hotel chain and like maybe a special Airbnb one off,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, hotels give you like 72-hour notice. Airbnb will give you like 1 week or more, like um latest notice. So yeah, refunds is something for people to explore. Each like there's we're not saying there's anything definitive. We're just expressing what we personally think, and each videographer can do his own terms. Um, so for example, payments like another thing. Do you take an advance booking fee? Do you charge hourly? Do you charge per milestone? I know videographers that charge 30%, 33%, or 35% to book, 35% at the end of the filming day, the other 35% at when the final video is delivered. Other videographers do 50-50, 50 before the shoot, 50 uh, uh, on the shoot day. I know wedding videographers that do full payment, one-time payment before the wedding day.
Wow.
Well, yeah, because they argued like they're going on their honeymoon and then they're busy with stuff. Like couples don't have like are not like if you give here's the thing, if you give a client a finished product and then you're chasing them for the payment, they might start making excuses why they can't pay and delay it by months. And I've had that happen at the beginning.
Mm,
Whereas as a videographer explained it to me, if they pay you, then they're gonna be on top of you, like, hey, when's the video ready? Like, okay, now you're speaking my language. Thank you for the payment. Here's the video on time as promised, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, as long as you're a stand-up guy and actually
Yeah.
do the video, you know?
Well,
We're
reputations
assuming.
online, public reviews, word goes
Hmm.
around with the age of the internet. Um,
I will say, one of my biggest clients is a school district, and they, as part of their finance department, like their policy is they won't pay any advance until like the product is actually delivered.
I've
So
had a
with that
few do
specific
that. Yeah.
client, like I don't get an advance, but they will do it where they'll have me invoice for the filming right after I film, and then that comes through, and then for the finished product right after I deliver it. So I can at least get a chunk of it right after we're filming. It's not an advance payment, but I don't have to wait till the final video is
Mm-hmm.
delivered to get paid for all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
some
Um.
businesses won't do an advance payment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found like really small businesses who are dealing with individuals will kind of have that approach of like, oh no, no, I need to see it and then I'm paying for it. Like, well, the work's being done and you see it, but as long as we did what we agreed, I don't care what your opinion is of it. You have to pay me for my work. See, this is another interesting thing. It's that we didn't put down in our list here of things to talk about, but I just realized it now. You have an expectation that you have to talk is how much creative freedom you have. Is the person hiring you to do their vision, or are they accepting of your vision? So, for example, a wedding video, most videographers paint the day with their style of editing. So you're not gonna film and the client is gonna ask you, oh, can you edit it like this other videographer with their style? They might ask for like a few things, but not the whole thing, right? And that should be beforehand. Like, oh, we want a video that's like whatever, very edgy, or I don't know what people are into now. Make it look like a horror thing, no, or they're Star Wars themed or something. Um, because I've had a few clients give me very specific details on how they want everything to happen. And I did it exactly how they asked it, and then they weren't happy with it. They thought, oh, yeah, this concept doesn't make sense. Like, oh, well, not my problem. Oh, well, the video doesn't look good. I'm like, yes, but not because of me. I did exactly what you
Mhm.
told me to. So it's like, that's another thing to try and question your client at the beginning stages is okay, how much it sounds like you guys have a script already made. Do you need any input from me or not? No. Okay. Then all like the what's the terminology I'm looking for? Like the owning of the end result is on you, not on me.
Mhm.
If everything's in
Yeah.
focus and it sounds good and it's framed how you want it, the actual content, if it's your doing, it's your problem. That's something that you should have in writing and they have to agree to.
Yeah, because I know you've been in the situation where you spoke up. Was it, I think this was you, where you spoke
Yes.
up saying like, "Oh,
This is
I
when
think
we
they
were
should take that again." They kind of flubbed that.
talking
Yeah, and you
about
were like,
directors and DOPs
yeah,
and yeah, in that episode, yeah. I had a
yeah.
DOP not help his client read a teleprompter, or he was reading it incorrectly and the guy was monitoring the teleprompter and wasn't helping him read the correct word. And I spoke up and I'm like, it's this, not this. You're oh, okay, thank you. And then the DOP's like, yeah, I'm in charge here, okay? Like, okay,
Not
buddy.
like, thanks for helping me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the contract I had with him said that both me and him have input on the client. And
Mm,
he resented that afterwards and realized that he can't do anything about it. So I'm glad I
he's
had that
gonna
in
quit.
writing.
Yeah. Otherwise,
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. What do you want to talk about next? Client communications.
Um, well, I think a, a self-employed person, so not someone that's representing a company and has to attach to the company's values, and you have to be instructed on those values. If you're self-employed, I think you have certain values that you have a right to do business with certain contexts that you want to, and you can avoid certain contexts that you don't want to, like if they don't align with your brand or your style or whatever. Like a right to refuse work. For example, if you're not comfortable with dealing with certain substances, like I was approached by cannabis shops, and I inquired, would the event involve smoking in the area? Oh yeah, it's gonna be completely like steamed up in there. Like, well, secondhand cannabis smoking is not something I'm interested in. I'm sorry. I was also approached to do adult content, which can't I don't want to do. If even were to do it, I wouldn't put it up on my website, and it's a niche that once you get in, you can't really do other work. You're stuck in that one. I've heard from other videographers. Um,
Mm,
so I think it's perfectly reasonable to refuse based on conscience or ethical or religious or like I am not comfortable filming this.
yeah, that's a good thing, I guess. Just kind of take a hard look at your own yourself. Think, where's my limit? Know that beforehand, and then be able to be comfortable
Mm-hmm.
telling a client that. And I don't think you need to like advertise that like, oh, I don't do this, I don't do that, I don't do that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you need to like
I mean, it doesn't have to
broadcast
be
that.
specific, but like somewhere in your terms of service or on your website, you should specify, I think, that you are a private business and not a corporate entity, and you have the right to refuse work. For example, let's move away from the ethical side of things. Standard in Canada, I'm pretty sure, even in workplace, and it should apply to self-employed too, you have the right to refuse hazardous working conditions. If you're on a
Yeah.
construction site and they don't provide you a hard hat or don't instruct you to bring a hard hat, I'm not filming if the guy's drilling above me and bits of concrete are falling down and hitting my gear. Like, no, this is a hazard to my gear, to myself. So
Mhm.
there are certain instances where um, I can't remember the exact context, but I know I talked to a videographer and they were like, "Yeah, we had to wrap up and leave and ditch the client. No refund because the client did fail to instruct that, hey, this is a work hazard area. Are you comfortable filming here?"
Yeah, I can see how that could be sketchy.
Yeah.
I used to do video for a metal roofing company, so some of the shots that they'd want would be like up high on a ladder, and times where even I was like, "Oh, I could get this shot if I just climb up here," and they're like, "You know what? It's not worth it. Don't
Mm-hmm.
do it. We don't have your safety gear. You're not insured for that.
Mm-hmm.
So just stay on the ground. Use like the tall tripod that we gave you, but so don't crawl on the roof in any circumstance." So they were like protecting themselves
Mm-hmm.
by making sure I didn't, you know,
Break a few ribs
do
and
anything for the
yeah,
shot. That
yeah,
seems to be a mantra among YouTubers, like anything for the shot, but it's like,
yeah.
really? There's got to be some boundary you have that you value your life or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You're not, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a good point.
And then uh, last thing I guess I would mention is maybe what do you do when you have that client that for some unprofessional reason decides to ghost or become unresponsive because they whatever have lost interest in the project, or they realize like, I'm not going to be able to pay this, or they found some guy that can do it cheaper and they're ditching you halfway through.
That's a hard one. Sometimes I've been guilty of not following up enough with potential clients
Mm,
that I could have turned into. Because I used to think like once they agree to something, then that's it. And you're like, okay, nice, we agreed. And then just wait for them to say, hey, I want you to come film now.
mm,
I didn't realize that, a lot of people have 100 things on their plate.
mm,
You're not their priority. So you need to make yourself heard and like, okay, let's get this in motion. What days are you free? Follow up with them with text or give them a call, and they'll actually, I found a lot of cases they actually appreciate that. They're like, oh yeah, thanks for reminding me. Yeah, let's set this up, or let's set up a meeting in person to go over details.
mm,
I thought I was always being a nuisance, but actually
mm,
a lot of clients really appreciate that, and they're like, oh, this guy's driven,
mm,
and oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's something I want to happen. So
mm,
for me, that was a personal thing I had to overcome.
mm. Yeah, I've had that too. Um, I guess the answer, like I already, like the answer to this question was already mentioned earlier. The best way to avoid ghosting, like, or a client, like you did the video, you provided the video, you're waiting for payment, you don't hear back, is to just get the payment, as much of the payment beforehand. So yeah,
So they
if
have some skin in the game.
some skin in the game, and if they do cut their losses, you still are in the positive. Like I've had two clients in the last 4 years that have had me film and then required me to do an edit, but after the film, they ghosted. But I made sure that I got paid half um, at the end of the filming day for each time. And that half literally covered just for the filming day. So, like, if they would have hired me just to do the filming, it would have been that price. I know one client didn't reach back because the person in charge of that video that I was supposed to communicate with had health issues, and I think it went to the point where they couldn't, they went on leave, they couldn't be with the company anymore, um, disability or something. So, nobody's fault really.
Mm.
But I got paid for the filming, so I was happy. And then the second guy, this is a very interesting thing. I didn't think I would get a professional company, not a huge multi-million dollar company, but like an established business with multiple employees. I They were supposed to work on this on the script and order of things with the raw footage, so I had the option to either give them the raw footage, um, like trademarked, watermarked, or really low proxy, like
Mm.
480p. And I'm like, yeah, I'll give you 480p because certain details I didn't want to cover up, and it was a faster upload for me to give them 480p uploads than like 4K with watermarks. Um, and I know for a fact that like they ghosted me. I got paid for the filming, and they were supposed to produce an internal staff training video. So I can't check it because it's not public, but I'm pretty sure they just took the 480p version and just made it work. So I'm just shrugging here, like, well, why did you bother?
Getting a
Uh,
professional to film it?
No, 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 no,
Oh,
because like the angles and the depth of field and like the image quality is there. The resolution I
yeah.
purposely dumbed down because it was not supposed to be a final hand-in product. But why did they waste my time discussing the video edit that needs to happen
Mm.
and me creating Google Docs and sending it to them and here write down which clip and what time specifically you wanted me to use because we did multiple takes of everything. So anyway, that was just weird. And it was like I won, but I felt like I not I won, but like I felt like I did my job. I got paid, It was less than agreed upon, but it was what we agreed upon technically. Because, like, okay, if it would have been just the filming, then yeah, you did pay. So I'm glad that I got either the advance payments or the payment at the end of the filming day, and you're not seeing uh the preview files until I get paid for the filming day. Because generally, what I do is at the end of the filming day or throughout the filming day, I like show the client, like, oh, yeah, this is how we got the shot. Here's the playback. Here's this. And they're happy. And when they see everything was filmed good and it sounds good, because they've seen the playback on camera, they'll easily agree to pay at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's better to think of a solution to ghosting or unresponsive behavior before it happens, because when it does happen you realize like, oh shoot, I'm not gonna get paid and I already wasted like a day filming and multiple days editing, and it's just some people do that. I don't know why. People think video is not is whatever. They don't take video seriously. Whereas other companies,
Uh,
like big companies, like, oh yeah, here's an advance payment. They actually insist. They're like, here, we're gonna give you half up, like straight up.
mm. Sometimes you need that to book a location, to rent gear, whatever,
Oh yeah,
you know?
yeah. That goes back in the clarifying things in the initial phase. Like, are you
Ye-
gonna provide the on-screen talent? Is it gonna be one of your employees, or do you need me to hire an actor? Or are you gonna hire an actor? Oh, is there a
Or we're just
difference?
gonna pull some random person off the street.
Is there a difference? Yes, there is. If you spend the time and interview the actor, then you pay the actor cost, and your time is your time. If you get me to do it, it's going to be a surcharge because I have to take away from my time. Same with
You're like, I know an
music.
actor, and he's me.
Oh, and it took me 5 hours to convince myself to do it.
Oh man, he drives a hard bargain, so I had to
Yeah.
splurge a little bit to hire him, but
Oh,
he's
and
the
he's so
best.
booked. He'll do it for this rate. Yeah.
Uh,
And I guess we should have prefaced this video by saying this, but like, this is all general stuff we're talking about. If you actually want to
mm,
do a serious terms of service or a contract, get some legal advice on how to word these things, just so clients cannot misinterpret words. Um, but yeah, and
yeah, legal advice. Our opinions are all our own.
yeah,
Yeah.
I did talk with a lawyer a few times about getting payment and all these things, and one very good advice that she had um to kind of tackle the ghosting thing was in the scenario where maybe a client promised they would make a payment at a certain time and they couldn't, and they're like trying to ignore you and hope that you won't chase them after it or whatever. uh Not being accusatory and being like proactively trying to be compassionate towards them, like, hey, payments due, but if you guys are having any issues with payment, you need another month, or you want to do a partial payment, let me know. And that gets like a positive response from businesses that are just having a slight payment issue. Like, oh, yeah, we're actually in the negative this month and we don't have the resources or whatever. You'll get a more detailed explanation as to why they're ghosting you instead of being like, hey, payments do pay up.
Mm. Yeah,
And
you don't want to come across that way.
yeah. Another interesting thing I'll quickly add, just so we complete the 1 hour mark, but are not too shy of it, is by I think this applies to the States too, but in Canada at least, you for late payment you put like a 2% per month late fee type of thing that accrues. Um, I thought 2% is like not compelling enough, and I wanted to put more, so I asked like, well, why can't I put like 10%? That would get a client like, hey, you owe me $3,000 next month. It's 3,300. Like, yeah, that would get me to pay faster than like, oh, it's gonna be $15 more. or whatever the math is. I didn't do it. Um, and she said, no, that's a work industry standard, and in court you cannot uphold a unjust contract. So
Hmm.
anything above 3% would be considered criminally, or not criminally, but like,
Not
um,
reasonable.
yeah, like legally unjustifiable. And it
Hmm.
might actually like cancel your entire contract if the counter argument from the client is you're unreasonable with your contract. And they just,
Unacceptable.
yeah,
Yeah.
unacceptable. They just need to prove that one thing, like this is highly unreasonable, and that's why I don't want to pay him anything. And the judge will agree with that, apparently. So yeah, a couple of things to keep in mind, and yeah, lawyers know their stuff and they have good legal advice. Look into that. Um,
Lawyer up if necessary.
mhm.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I've had signed contracts like e-signature for the last few years, but now I'm trying to do just email. I'll just paste in my final email after I talk about all the details. When we finally get to the agreement, I'll do a quick summary, link to my terms of service. If you agree to this, we may proceed. So I'm going to try doing that from now on. It's just a bit
Do you need
easier.
a written confirmation of they read it or just the fact that you sent it?
Well, I would need them to, like, that gives them the opportunity to say, oh, actually, I don't want this, or, whoa, what you wrote here is not what I agreed to. Because if they just say, like, okay, sure, filming on the 5th, that's an agreement.
Hmm.
But I also have, like, an email tracker that's a free add-on
Mm.
you can get just to see if clients, for example, click a download link and have access to the final video, or if they click whatever links you send, or if they've even read your email. So sometimes
Um,
a client will ghost you, but actually they were on vacation and they failed to tell you. So you can see by the fact that the email's unread.
mm.
So then maybe you'll text them or contact them in a different method.
Well, Doran, apparently the new iOS 15 has a built-in feature now in Mail that you can turn on that will be like obscure things so that it specifically learns how to ignore tracking pixels and all that stuff. So now you might actually not be able to rely on that anymore because Apple's like, let's make it harder for people to track you through your email. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
making harder for the public to do it. Yeah, but themselves, oof.
Ooh.
Different topic. uh, okay, okay, good to know. Yeah, I haven't had a ghosting issue for quite a few years now, so hopefully none of my clients use that iOS thing.
October 31st. I'm guessing this podcast will drop before then, so,
Yeah.
you might have a ghosting issue then.
Ooh,
Ooh.
spooky, spooky podcast. All right. Oh, I think that pretty much sums up everything I have to say.
Mm, likewise.
Hmm. Okay, well, that's a wrap for today's podcast. Thank you for listening and watching. Probably gave you a lot to think about, and yeah, it's the more communication you do early on, the better. Don't be afraid of intimidating your client. If they're serious about the video, they'll appreciate the extra effort. Um, so yeah, we encourage you to get stuff written down and double acknowledged by your client. Leave us any comments or suggestions on anything we've missed. What do you guys use in your contracts? Give us some tips and tricks. We love that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And be sure to subscribe to not miss an episode of the Nate and Doran podcast. You can find us on YouTube, of course, watching us, or listen to us with Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This has been Nate and Doran. Thank you for watching or listening.